record up, and it's just fighting me a little bit. All right, I apologize for that little delay, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with our little intro to SCORE before we turn it over to our speakers today. So I'd like to welcome all of you for how to build rapport with anyone within seconds. And we're very excited to offer this topic. I think it's a great topic, and I think it's a skill that anyone can build on. And we're really excited to have our presenters with us today. Just to get started, I'm going to just talk a little bit about SCORE. We do find that we don't always have all SCORE clients on our webinars, so I want to make sure you understand. SCORE offers a couple different things. One of them are training, which you are here with us today for one of our training presentations. But mostly importantly, what SCORE does is mentoring, and we offer free and confidential mentoring to those of you that are thinking about starting a business, are in the process of starting a business, or already have a small business. Our volunteers our mentors are all volunteers that come from different backgrounds and have different experiences and skills to offer our clients. And you can meet with a mentor as often as you like. You can create a relationship, a working relationship, and sometimes often they will add in other mentors to bring in additional skill sets as you go along your business path. The nice thing about SCORE is it is a national organization. So if for any reason we can't quite help you at the chapter level or the district level, we do have that database of volunteers nationally to try and get those questions that you have answered. So you might be wondering, how do I get a mentor? Super easy. You can go to the chapter websites listed here. I will put those in chat after my opening remarks. You can email me. I will also put that in the chat, and I will make sure the right chapter reaches out to you. And you or you can just put a note simply in chat, and I will make sure we reach out to you. So, whoops. If you already have a mentor and it's been a while since you've met with them, reach out, run your new ideas that you have with them, update them on how things are going. Definitely love to reconnect with their old clients. Okay, we are going to use Q&A today. That will allow us to not lose track of any questions. Q&A is for questions you want asked to the presenter. Everything else can go in chat if it's just something for me or just general comments or general questions. Go ahead, put those in chat. But if you have a question that you want asked to the presenter, please put it in Q&A so I don't lose track of any of those questions. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that down and turn over to our presenters and let them introduce themselves. And
Great. Well, thank you, Teresa. This is exciting. I'm sharing a screen now. At least I hope I am. We're excited to be here. I'm Kevin Martin and my business partner, Lisa Schermerhorn, and we'll introduce ourselves in just a moment. What we're talking about today is something really exciting. It's part of what we have as an Unstoppable Mindset series, and it's part of a mindset and part of strategies and stuff for you, for anyone to have that wants to be successful. How to build rapport with anyone within seconds. Lisa and I have been doing this for many years, and rapport building skills are important in any part of your life, but especially in business. So let's introduce ourselves first. So I want to introduce Lisa, or actually have Lisa introduce herself before we get started here. Lisa, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, just a little bit of background about me. About 20 years ago, I was going through a very difficult time in my life. And I was going for help from person to person, therapist to therapist, coach. No one was able to help me. And so I set out to find someone, and I found someone who was an expert in the subconscious mind and helped me get to the root cause of my issues really quickly. And from then on, I devoted my my studies, my time, my energy in becoming the person that I was looking for 20 years ago. And what I love to do is very unique and helps people really shift and change quickly. And so I'm very passionate about what I do. I love what I do, and it's all about your mindset.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lisa. And I'm the other half, Kevin Martin. And I'll tell you a little bit of story about how I got to do what I've been doing. My wife and I, years ago, decided we wanted to adopt. And our first child at 5.5 had been in 7 homes. And so there was a lot of problems that he came with, and they just grew heavier and heavier until it was almost uncontrollable. Living in a place run by the Department of Mental Health, nothing was working, and it just got worse and worse. So I went on my search, and my search was with this thing called NLP, neuro linguistic programming. And when I had the work done with my son, and I didn't do it, I actually hired somebody, but when I had the work done, everything went away. From 17 years of baggage went away. And I said, I want to do this too. I want to help people like this. And this neuro-linguistic programming is the basis for what we're going to teach you today, this building rapport. So it has a lot of business parts to it, but it also has clinical parts. And that's how I got to doing what I'm doing today. So a little bit about my backstory. Let's talk about what this thing is, this thing called rapport. And in this little cartoon, you have these two people, and one saying, hey, I just can't seem to connect with her. I don't understand. And she's saying, you know, I'd like to work with him, but we don't communicate well. When rapport isn't there, these are the kinds of things that happen.
So what exactly is rapport? The dictionary defines it as, having mutual trust. So when you think about the most important relationships that you have, they're all based on trust. And so what we want to teach you here today is some really simple techniques that can help you establish trust quickly.
And trust is important in business, isn't it, Lisa?
Yeah.
If you don't have trust with your prospects or your clients, or you don't have a good level of trust, they're not going to want to do work with you.
Yeah.
So rapport, again, rapport is usually created when there's something in some common ground between two people. If two people find out what they both love, for instance, antique cars, and they both own one, a bond is instantly created. I'm sure you all have these times when you met someone for your first time and they had a similar liking to you do, and all of a sudden you start talking, and you start talking not only about that similar thing, but that you're able to talk about other things. And that's rapport. That's when it really becomes easy to be able to talk with others.
So rapport is really based on common ground, as Kevin just said. And there's this whole idea that people tend to like other people who are just like them. So it's like when you find that common ground, it's really important. One of the things that I find that's really fun is if you look at my Zoom, you see, look, this is kind of interesting. There's these logs back here. And so, people will look at my house and start conversations based on living on a log home, and either, oh my God, I've always wanted to live in one. I've always wanted to experience one. So I always have something that creates conversation in my background. And that's really helped me create rapport.
So myth alert. We always like to hear, we've always heard, and we like to say opposites attract. Well, for magnets, yes, opposites do attract. But you know what? When it comes to people, they tend to like other people who are just like them, or as that example that Lisa just gave, or like they would want to be. So people are attracted to you if you're like them, and or you have some qualities that they like. I love the idea of a log home, and Lisa and I have talked. I don't live in one, so we're not that way like that. But Lisa and I have talked about living in a log home many times, and I've visited there just because it's so beautiful. So people are attracted. By the way, if opposites attract, if two people were completely opposite, they'd probably never meet. They wouldn't be in the same places. They wouldn't have anything to talk about. It is those things that we have in common that bring us together.
So exactly, I started talking about this before about having, the log home in the background. But if you're looking at someone and they're on Zoom and you notice things in the background, family photos, you can also ask about where they grew up. If they start talking about if they had children, ask about their children's. There's a lot of people who love sports. So, ask people, and people love to talk about themselves. Ask lots of questions until you can find that common ground, when you can find something that's in common, especially if it's industry specific. Immediately, you can start talking about that industry. But one of the things you want to be careful of is you could bring something else up and it could backfire, because someone could have a picture of what appears to be their wife, and it could be their soon-to-be ex-wife in the background. And someone's like, so you always want to be careful.
That won't build rapport, will it?
No, you say you might want to take that picture down. But yeah, you just want to be careful with that. But for the most part, I would say it works.
All right, thank you. Okay, so what can we find that can build rapport, that we all can find common ground in? Well, what about communications? There's been studies done for many, many years. And by the way, this really hasn't changed. When we're talking about communications, when we're in front of somebody, physiology, the way we stand, sit, breathe, everything about our physical self, that's 55% of communications. In tonality, the sounds of our voice, the pitch and the volume and everything else, that's 38% of communications. And believe it or not, this is the thing you're going to find is wild. Words themselves, the specific words, is only 7% of communications. So when you're either standing in front of somebody or you're in front of them and you're looking at each other in your Zoom, physiology is still a big thing. Physiology is still a big thing, but certainly when you're in front of people, now that we're allowed to, things are coming back and we're allowed to go out again and be in front of people. The way you stand, the way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you hold yourself, your posture, and where your arms and your legs are and everything like that. That's your physiology. That's what you look like. And ways everybody else does, that's their physiology as well. When that physiology is something that can be in common, that makes it incredible. So let's look at these as we break them down.
One of the things that is so powerful is when you think about tonality. How many times can you be on the phone and you just hear the word hello, and you can tell if that person is angry, sad, or happy, and whether or not this is going to be a good call. You can even, I remember as a child, if I heard my first name and my middle name together, it was the only time that I heard Lisa Beth put together, I knew I was in trouble.
Yeah. Lisa, I didn't need the first and the last name. I mean, first and middle, although once in a while, but it's just by the way my mother called my name, period. I knew exactly what was going to go on. If she said, Kevin, it's, yeah, all right, she's maybe calling me in for dinner or just wants to talk to me. But if she said, Kevin, I knew I was in trouble. I knew I was in trouble. And for the rest of this, the physiology is, the mirror and matching is, you got an idea in that little photo. He's looking in the mirror And if your physiology matches somebody else, if they're standing and we're standing and they're leaning over on one side and we lean over on another side, we're matching their physiology. And we become like them at a really deep level. They're thinking, hey, that person's just like me. They're standing a little slouched, a little leaning over to the side. And when the words start to match, when the words start to match or the tonality starts to match, we're also thinking, hey, that's a little like us. It's a little like us. What about physiology, that 55%, Lisa?
Well, when you think about physiology, you've got your breathing, your posture. One of the things we've had to learn on Zoom is proper Zoom protocol. I don't know how many times do we see people on Zoom who are sitting in the dark, not well lit, leaning back, looking at their phone, not paying attention, arms folded. That's not the way that, that's not inviting when you have a conversation with someone on Zoom. And you certainly wouldn't generally do that on purpose, in person. So you want to be really mindful of how you're coming across on Zoom with your physiology. It's not just being on purpose. So, leaning in. Now, if you're talking to someone who has who's very kind of quiet, more of an introvert and is a bit shy, if you start, bowling them over, or well, that's more of about, your communication style. But physiology, if someone's leaning in, you want to kind of lean in. You want to stand up, sit up straight. If someone's got their arms folded, you might want to fold your arms. If they tilt their hands or if they speak with their hands, but you don't want to mimic. There's a very fine line between being subtle versus being really obvious that you're mimicking someone because they may feel like they're being made fun of.
Mm-hmm. And even, this is really important in person, but even on Zoom, like Lisa was. Now, if Lisa and I are talking and she's sitting up proper and I'm like this, if you can see me, and I'm sitting way back, what's Lisa going to think of me? If she's paying enough attention, she's got her posture is upright and she's paying attention and she's looking at me leaning way back, she's not going to feel as comfortable. So even on Zoom, matching is a really good thing. But if you're in person, and like Lisa said, arms and hands and stuff, if someone's got their arms folded, and I do this often, not because I shut up the world, but because it's a comfortable posture for me, and they're standing there like that, I may stand there and maybe put my arms a little bit instead of fully folded, maybe that, or maybe just subtly get to a point as I'm talking to go folded. It's things like that. And like she says, not if they change their posture, instantly change your posture, but subtly get into the same posture. This is so important because it is 55% of our communications. It's important to know when you're communicating to look good, but if you're mirroring or matching somebody, it's important to be able to get close to what they are. Usually if someone's got if they're standing with a leg crossed, I'll eventually just stand, maybe even lean with a leg crossed, because it's a very, very comfortable way to do that. So it's just a subtlety that you want to do. And tonality, as Lisa was starting to talk with, this is big. And if you're on Zoom, it's huge. If you're on a phone, it's huger, because you don't have that, you're not seeing that. So huger. It's a wonderful
I know
word.
I was going to ask you about that.
Wonderful
Is that
word.
a new word?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So tonality is all about the tone of your voice, the volume, the pitch, the pacing, the cadence, right? The sing-song cadence. Here's the most important things, is the pacing. if someone is talking really fast and you're talking really slow, that person's going to get really aggravated because they want to get going. And the same is the opposite. And if they're talking soft and you're talking loud, bowling them over, I believe is the term you use, Lisa, right?
Yep.
It's not going to work. People are going to feel intimidated. So you matching tonality, just going with the volume, going with the basic pacing, the pitch if you can. Don't recommend matching accents, because people will think you're mimicking them, you're making fun of them, their accents. However, you match as much as you can. People will feel comfortable. When they feel comfortable, that trust comes up. And the last one is words.
So words are really important in this, and you look for catchphrases. And, you know, Kevin, you have a great story about things, but I have a friend, one of my closest friends, who uses the term cool beans all the time. I don't know what it means, but whenever I'm with her, I say cool beans. I don't say it with anyone else, but it's always fun. And so when you have someone who has a catchphrase, it's always good to use it. And Kevin, I don't know if you want to share that story about
Sure.
the fellow who's speaking.
Sure. And you're saying, well, you just said words are important and there's only 7% specific words. If they're words that people use all the time, they're important for this ringing of a bell. They're important for this rapport. That's when they become important. So I had a friend who was out, he was making a presentation at a good sized corporation. And before the presentation, he was in the hallway and the CEO was out having some words with his management, and someone had asked him something and he said, yeah, absolutely, you can take that to the bank. He heard that, he remembered that. That's a catchphrase. Later on in his presentation, when the CEO was present, there was a question asked by the CEO. And when my friend heard the question and he could give an affirming answer, he put a big smile on his face and he said, yes, and you can take that to the bank. And as soon as he said that, he saw the smile on the CEO's face. And by the way, he absolutely, they made that decision right then and there in that meeting to work with him. The CEO heard something that was comfortable. They don't get it really consciously unless you overuse the words. That's, again, start mimicking. If you overuse the words and start saying every other sentence, take that to the bank. But if you use them once or twice, it makes that person feel so comfortable. So even with words that are only 7% of our total communication, these are powerful. This is powerful. Let me back up just a second. I want to wrap that up. If it's okay, Lisa,
Yep.
We can wrap this up. So we were talking about this physiology, the tonality, and the words. That's what makes up the communications pie. And the physiology is the most important thing. Granted, when the pandemic started and we had to go do things not in person anymore, and we had to make phone calls and we had to do Zoom calls, and Zoom calls are what most of us do nowadays, like this conference, it got a little difficult. It made us a little bit more nervous. We weren't in front of people the way we were comfortably. But the same thing applies. And when I say matching and mirroring, let's talk about the mirroring. Meant if you're standing or sitting opposite of this person, be it Zoom or in person, you have a mirror image. If they have their left hand under their chin, you'd actually have it'll be your right hand, because it'll be a mirror image. Because you're facing each other, so you look like a mirror image. That's what mirroring meant. Matching means, okay, if they have their left hand, you put your left hand under. You won't be a mirror image. Either one works, by the way. That's why we use the terms mirroring and matching. Either one works, because a hand under the chin like this, or like this, for both people, that the magic starts to happen. The magic starts to happen. Lisa, how many times have you been in front of somebody where you just felt almost magically that this person is someone you've known for a long time?
Yeah, it happens often. It
Yeah.
happens a lot, and you establish close friendships from this very quickly. It was interesting, and I don't know if we want to address, there's a couple of questions in there if we should wait till the end, but there's someone who asked about people who don't want to be asked if they have kids or where they live. This is where you can ask them, find out commonality. And then it's really about your intuition and watching facial expressions, watching to see if they light up and want to talk about it, or if they don't, you just move on to something else. Most people like talking about themselves, but and I haven't really had anyone get upset about me asking a question. If they just start to switch the topic, then they'll switch the topic. There's something where the other question about how much to share on LinkedIn. That's something that we're going to address at the very end, because you want to evoke information about that's emotional, and that's where you get into someone's why. And so you want to put information about why you do what you do. So it's a little different than what we're doing now. I hope that we'll address that later.
Yeah, I want to address that first one. That was, there are people that don't want to be asked. That's what's so cool about this approach, is you're not doing it with asking any questions at first, right? So you build rapport this way. You build rapport this way. And by the way, they don't want to be asked about if they have kids or where they live or anything like that, because you're a stranger. They don't know you. They don't trust you. When you build rapport this way, people are going to want to start to talk. Actually, you're going to want to start to talk. I asked Lisa if she's met people that she felt like she's known for years. When you do this, when you do this with other people, not only are they getting comfortable with you, you're actually getting more comfortable with them, and you're going to actually feel that connection, and you're going to feel that trust with them as well. It's a two-way street. So people are going to want to ask. I talked about my having adopted children. That's a subject opener. And so this is addressing both questions. That is a subject opener. I do make it known, because there are people out there that love to talk about children, love to talk about adoption. And so yes, I find that common ground with people often as well. But starting off with the matching and mirroring, so that they have a good feeling for me, so that they trust me, that's where it starts. Okay, thank you for those questions, by the way. All right, so here's another part of matching and mirroring. Okay, we have these modalities. Modalities are basically the way in which we sense and communicate in the world. We use our eyes, that's visual. We use our hearing, our ears, that's auditory, and then we use our feelings. We get feelings about what things are in the world, and that's kinesthetic. We also have two other senses: olfactory, which is our scent, and gustatory, which is our taste. We don't usually communicate with those two. Maybe unless you're a chef or a baker, then you can use those two. But the three important things are visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. These are other things we can find to have common ground with other people. And let's tell you a little bit about how that works.
So most of the majority of the people are visual. They tend to breathe higher in the chest. Their eyes. This is the thing that was so fascinating to me. and we're going to talk about this in depth, is that people who are visual, when they're asked a question, tend to look up, or they're recalling information. So they'll either look up to the left and up to the right. And we're going to talk more about that. So that gives you a sense of where they're visual, and they're going to use language like, I see, everything is clear to me. They're going to use visual language. And then you have people who are more auditory, and then you're going to find out that people tend to use, we can go on to auditory.
Okay, sure.
Well, with visual, I actually, before that, I have a close friend of mine who is a photographer. She's a professional photographer. We go snowshoeing, and she's looking out at everything in nature. She sees faces, she sees things in nature. Whereas I tend to be more kinesthetic, and I'm like, I love the way it feels. But she cracks me up because she always has her camera with her. And so everything is visual when I'm with her, and I'm trying to get some exercise, and she wants to take pictures everywhere.
Now that's a great example of someone who is more visual than anything else.
Yeah.
Okay. So why are we talking about this as, for this report thing? Because visuals, they like to have pictures. They like to see things, right? So that's one of their likes that we know of right off the top. And they also tend to use these words that have to do with being visual. They'll tend to use, I look at this way, this appears this way, this is really clear to me, this is right, I can see what you mean, or I want the bird's eye view. By the way, they communicate really easily this way. So if you notice that somebody uses these kind of words, and they're always looking up to the left or the right, then they are predominantly visual. So then what do? You can show them things. If you're in a sales situation, and that's predominantly what a lot of us are going to be in, right? If you're in a sales situation, explaining it to them is not going to be as powerful as showing them. And using words like these predicates, like look, appear, clear, or anything else that has to do with seeing, will really resonate with them. So that's why we're showing you this. Now, most of the population is visual. Then we have auditory. These are people who love to learn, they love to listen, right? I have a preference. I listen to books rather than seeing them, rather than reading them. I like to listen to them. So 25% of the population is auditory, and their voice is usually rhythmic or melodic, and singers probably are more auditory than everyone else, right? Musicians are. Their eyes often dart, instead of up to the left or right, they dart kind of sideways, left or right, because they're actually remembering a sound, or they're creating a sound in their head. And their auditory preferences have to do with language that sounds like, okay, listen, harmony, rings a bell, music to my ears, this resonates with me, it's an earful. They like to hear things, describe it to me. All right, so these people, if you notice and you're listening to their predicates and you're watching their eyes go back and forth, by the way, these people are the ones you want to be explaining a lot to. They'll listen to you. They'll hear it. Showing them pictures or giving them something to actually try is going to be less effective than explaining it to these people.
Yeah, these are the people who don't want you to hand them directions to put something together complicated. They want someone to tell them how to put it together.
They want someone to tell them. Absolutely. And these, Lisa, are my favorites.
Yeah. See, I'm a kinesthetic, and I tend to really feel. I actually have all three. I'm one of the rare people that when I did an evaluation that I have, but I tend to really need to feel it. I need to touch it. I need to know it at a deep level. So this is really important to me. And I remember going with my college roommate. She's an MRI tech, and there was at the Science Museum in Boston, they had this exhibition where it had all of these bodies, and you could see, they opened them up, you could see what the physical body looked like inside. And she's very visual. So she was like, oh my gosh, look at, there's the heart, there's the tendon, there's this. And I started going, oh my God, is there family here? Like, I started going to feelings. I was having a really hard time with it. So for me, it's all about the experiential. So as Kevin said, you know, if I were to go to buy a new car, the best thing for a salesperson would do is to get me inside the car to feel it. Because yes, visually I may like it, but until I get in it and experience it, that's what does it for me.
Yeah, and these people that are high kinesthetic, I mean, Lisa's able to work on all three levels because, you know, we're going to talk about an assessment, and in the assessment she took, she was pretty even, so she's able to work on all three levels. But someone who's primarily high kinesthetic, and that's that 10 to 20% of it out there. I had someone in one of my training courses. I've trained for many years, and I'd have all these visuals up on the wall like we usually do, right? And this was a technical training course, so I'd have all the instructions and the visuals up there, and then I'd be explaining it, and then we get to the point where, okay, you get your hands on and you start doing it. During the first two parts, this guy would be totally lost. It wasn't until he actually started getting his hands on the keyboard and was able to do it, that's when he started learning. And that's how kinesthetics are. And you know, by the way, people who are truly mostly kinesthetic, they are ones who often their eyes tend to dart down and looking down very often. And you know why that is? Because they're looking to get a feeling in there. And when you ask them a question, they have to get that feeling before they can answer. And this is a tough thing about working with this one person I work with, because it took him 3 minutes to answer me. He'd take a deep breath, he'd look down, and about 30, 45 seconds later, he'd have an answer. Maybe it wasn't 3 minutes, but it felt like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
And people will also close their eyes.
Yes.
They will also close their eyes to imagine. For me, what I'll do is I'll visualize and then feel it. Like I have to have that experiential, like imagine what it's like. So, right. You know, there are exceptions to all of these, but this is a really cool guide, because when you pay attention, you're really going to see or experience what it's like, what you do. And pay attention to family members, because when you start talking to them, see how their eyes dart. It's really fun.
It really, truly is. It's amazing. And you listen to what they're saying. So these people, they're going to be the people that says, I really need to get my arm around this problem. Or, you know, I can't grasp it. Or I'd like it to be concrete in my head. I mean, this is pretty rough, you know. They'll be using all these predicates that have to do with actual tactile touch of some sort or feeling of some sort. And so that's when you know they're kinesthetic. Again, be it visual, auditory, or kinesthetic, the whole idea is to try to discover by listening and watching them. And we're going to bring you to the watching them in just a moment. And when you can discover somebody is predominantly one or the other, then you can actually really, what you're doing is helping them be comfortable and helping them understand what you're trying to put across.
So really quickly, I see a question here about when we encounter people who have their hands crossed or arms crossed in meeting, what are some things we can say or do? You want to cross your arms. cross their hands, do exactly what they do. You may find that they put their arms down or they keep it there. There's a misconception that when someone has their arms crossed, that they're actually shut down. It's not true. Some people just, they're very comfortable with their arms crossed when they talk. And I have a funny story. I went to visit my son, and he had come home from work, and he was on the couch, kind of leaning back, and he was on his phone. And I was trying to have a conversation, and I was getting aggravated because he wasn't answering me. And I ended up talking to his girlfriend. And then I got the idea. I went over to the couch and I slumped down on the couch in the same exact position. And I got on my phone pretending to look at social media. And all of a sudden he started talking to me. And we had this amazing conversation. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But it's literally that easy. Just get into that same position. I was shocked. And I had a good giggle for myself, but now I know that if I want my son's attention or my daughter's attention or other people, you just literally get into the same, approximate position that they're in.
Exactly. And by the way, Lisa's right that, this thing about body language, we all have our different things that we do with our physiology, and it has a meaning to us personally, but it's not generalized. But even if someone had their arms folded in because they were shut out, when you fold your arms, they're going to actually notice at a subconscious level, at a very deep level, and they're going to feel comfortable with you, and they're going to open up.
Yeah.
So even if they are shut, they will open up. It's amazing how this works.
Because people like to be acknowledged. So on an unconscious level, you're acknowledging them.
Yeah.
You really are. People like to be heard. They like to be seen. They want to be acknowledged. So when you cross your arms, you're basically saying, I'm feeling the same as you are, without saying it. I hope that makes sense.
Exactly. One last story on that, because the founders, the people who created NLP, they did a lot of work clinically. And one time they found this person in a hospital. He was catatonic, and he'd just sit there. He'd sit there, not moving for hours and hours. And so one of the founders sat next to him, just like Lisa did with her son, and got in a very similar position that he was in, and stood still and sat still for a couple hours. And what had happened is that person who was catatonic, who would sit there all day until someone moved him, he actually got up on his own and left. Because
Wow.
he felt that he wasn't conscious of the other guy doing it. He was actually felt it, that the other guy was just like him, and he didn't want to be that. So this works. This works in amazing ways, and it works at a very deep level. People aren't really conscious of you doing it unless you're mimicking them and doing it in the exact second. Then they make a change. You make a change. That's not the way to do it. Do it as subtle as possible. I've been doing this for many, many, many years. I've been doing it in a business environment. I've never been caught by anybody doing this purposely, except for the one person who was doing it to me.
So quick question. I see someone mentioned traumatic brain injury, and thank you so much, Charity, for bringing that up, because with a traumatic brain injury, your cues can be opposite. They can change the cues. It can reverse it. Let's say you're visual, and we'll talk about this in the next slide, but you may be reversed. So here we're talking about, if you're looking up to the left versus up to the right, one is you're actually remembering information, and the other one is you're constructing, you're making up a story, you're being creative. And some people will actually use this as a way to see if someone's lying. Because if you're asking a question and then they're suddenly constructing a story, you're like, I wonder if they're making this up or it's true. Now, you want to be careful, because you wouldn't know if someone's had a traumatic brain injury, they're reversed. So you want to be careful of that. So this is a guide. It's not exact. And I
Right.
also want to answer Joan's question about humor. Humor is really good to use as long as the person you're talking to has a sense of humor. I can't tell you how many times, because I love using humor, where I have on occasion love to use humor, and then I get. And I actually spoke at an event, my first event in front of 100 people, who I had used a professional a stand-up comic who helped me pepper my talk full of humor. And I got up there and there was nothing. It was in front of the Depression and Bipolar Association. And I found out later on that I was speaking to an entire group of people who were on lithium. So so humor can work, but sometimes it doesn't.
That's my favorite audience, by the way.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to that question about the brain injury. In all of the testing that I've done with people to see whether, whether they're oriented the way this chart is or not, the only people that were oriented differently are people who actually had head injuries. The only ones that I ran into. And by the way, this chart is from looking at them, so that when you're looking at them, they'll go up over to your right in visual remember, and up over to your left. It's their left or their right if it's from their point of view, but this is made from your point of view looking at the other person. So I just wanted to make that. And by the way, if you right now, you can all do this. If you try to think about what your bedroom looked like, not remember, but try to think about what your bedroom looked like when you were 10 years old and what it was, colors and stuff like that. See if you can track where your eyes go, because often we can, and we see, oh yeah, my eyes went up to that side when I was just asked that question. So you may actually get that answer to yourself right here and then. Okay. All right. Now, if there's no more questions of this, by the way, again, if you're looking at somebody, and it doesn't matter up right, up or left, if they're looking up to either side, often they're highly visual. So that's when I want to show them things. That's when I want to paint pictures for them in their mind. I want to describe images. If they're looking just sideways, left to right, that's when I do what I'm doing now. A lot of talking, a lot of explanation. And if you see them taking deep breaths and looking down to the side, often that's when you have a clue that they're kinesthetic. And you want, if you can somehow get them to actually do stuff, actually do feel stuff or whatever it is.
Experience it. Yeah.
Experience it. Thank you. Experience
Yeah.
it. That's where it is. So we're talking all about building rapport, and it does happen in seconds when you get good at this, and it's a matter of practice, right? Lisa, where should they practice? If anyone wants to know, where can I practice this? Where's a good place to practice?
Your friends, your family, at dinner. You start asking them questions. You can just see at dinner table where their eyes are going, what kind of language they're using. Practice at home. And here's another really cool thing is the more you use that language, the more the person you're talking to, be it your significant other, your children, the more they're going to feel closer to you. This actually can help you create intimacy and trust and closer relationships by using this language.
Exactly. My favorite place to practice this is in restaurants with the waiter or waitress, and just, you listen to the way they talk, they speak. You're going to be sitting, so the physiology is a little more difficult, but you listen to the way they talk, to speak, and match it. By the way, I didn't say this, but if you're opposites on any of those realms of physiology, of a tonality, of kinesthetic, if you're of physiology, of words, should I say, if you're opposite on any of those realms, you're going to break rapport and you're not going to be successful in whatever you're doing. Tonality is a great example. Being too loud when they're really soft, vice versa. You break rapport. So what you're trying to do is build rapport to create, make them comfortable, create a good relationship. This IQ thing and this VAK thing, I bet you guys are kind of curious as to what you might be, right? So you a little self-discovery. We're going to help you with that. We're going to help you with that self-discovery. And there's other self-discovery that would help as well. So we want to talk about this last thing here. Okay, it's something called why. Lisa and I are why coaches as well. And this is self-discovery about when knowing your why, what you say, what you do has more impact.
So when we talk about the VAK and all this NLP about creating rapport, that's how you're creating rapport. But when you know your why and the why of the person you're communicating with, the people you work with, your boss, it takes it to a whole nother level, because your why is emotionally based. Okay, there's a part of your brain that is deeply connected to your why. And that's where your decision making happens. That's where major decision, especially purchasing. So when you discover what your why is or what someone else's why is, this is powerful. And someone asked a question about LinkedIn and all of that you want to use your why on your LinkedIn and your branding and your marketing. And you're going to attract other people who have a similar why. And those are the people who are going to want to work with you. So this is, when you learn your why, it's a whole nother level of rapport. So if you want to know more about that, because we don't have time to get into that, and I don't want to confuse you, but you can go much deeper in discovering there's actually 9 different types of whys. And this is magnificent when it comes to branding and attracting people on your social media and your LinkedIn, especially.
Yes, and this is just another extension of actually, building rapport is when you actually know your own drive, your own why, and what other people's are as well. Transformation. Well, everything is transformation, and what we're talking about is transforming your communications today. It isn't about being someone you want to be. It's transformation is about discovering you. And that's why this VAK test is important. And that's why understanding your own why is important. So we're going to take some questions, but here, if you want that VAK test and you want information about your why as well, use this QR code. You can go right there, fill in the information, and we'll automatically send you that VAK test, right? And you can discover something about yourself. And if you want to take that test and you want to just give it to your spouse or your partner or whatever, and see what they are and see if you're the same or opposites, see what happens there. And by the way, if you can't use your QR code, it's this website /VAK, because it's for VAK. All right, let's open it up to any other questions. There was one question, it's not answered yet. And it was, how much detail should we share on LinkedIn? Now, this is where it's your comfort level, right? LinkedIn or in your social media. How much details do you want to share? So you find speaking points. Well, Lisa, you heard Lisa and I share our stories. In certain places in social media, those stories are there. We don't put it straight out, and I don't put my story on Facebook per se, and it depends on the social media. At least that's my preference. LinkedIn is really all about business, and I'll condense my story, but this is your preference. How much do you want to share as talking points? Okay, obviously there's information we all have that we don't want to be able to share.
You want to share enough to leave them wanting more.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to give it all away. So enough to attract interest. And you're going to attract people who are like you. One of the things that was so powerful when I found out what my why is, is that I like, and Kevin has the same why, we like to challenge conventional thinking. So when the way I work is we do things outside the box. So I'm not going to market to people who are very conventional and don't like to work outside the box. I'm not going to use that language. I'm going to use language that is going to resonate from me to someone else about other people who like to think outside the box. Entrepreneurs, people who have their own businesses, people who like to challenge status quo. Those are people who are going to tend to resonate or like what Kevin and I have to say. People looking for a better way. People like to do things a little differently. That's all, because we're not conventional. So someone who's very conventional, this may or may not be something that resonates with them. That's why it's so interesting when you know your why and you know more about you, you can market to the people who are going to really, really resonate to you and your message. So I want to thank you so much for having us here. I know we were answering questions along the way. If anyone has any other questions, or if we didn't answer anything, completely, please let us know. But I feel really honored and grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. And we hope that I really, when I give this, I really hope that someone's going to take it seriously and go try it. Right. When you get off of this and you go beat someone else, be it if you're working from home and you got a family member, try it. See what happens. It is just so much fun. It really is. If you want to get a hold of either Lisa or I, you just our emails are that long website there. It's lisa@peakperformancemindsetcoaching.com or kevin@peakperformancemindsetcoaching.com if you want to reach out to us personally. Or if you use a VAK QR code, that's what I wanted to say, in the message area, say, hey, I really want to have a conversation with you about. And we'd be happy, very happy. I think we have another question here. I find that the more people have to gain from us, the more effort and techniques they put into trying to match and have caught people faking likes and dislikes. Okay, good.
That's
question.
A brilliant question. Okay. It's got to be authentic. It's got to be. Really? Don't fake it. Don't make up stuff, because people will absolutely figure it out fast.
Exactly. And here's the assumption we all go on. And when I got trained in this, we all talked about ethics in the very beginning. You have to be ethical with what you're doing. Yes, I look at it from the point of view is I'm not doing this so I can get something from them, even if it's a sales call. I'm doing this to make them comfortable. I want them to be comfortable, right? And I do want them to take my ideas seriously, take my whatever I'm talking about, whatever I have to present seriously. And so that's the way I look at it. But yes, people can be unauthentic. They can do this for manipulation. And it's really not about that. It's about getting people comfortable so that you can have a really good, honest, and authentic conversation.
And here's the other thing. You may not get a sale from someone because of this in business, but they are going to refer you to, they may refer, oh, you know what? It didn't work for me, but I think that this would work really well for you. I met this person and they seem really cool. I would love to find out more. I think you would like them.
Yeah. And I use this out in public to make people comfortable. I used this when I was at a flight where, at a desk for an airline where everybody was so ticked off. And this poor woman behind it, she was so frazzled because they were yelling at her and screaming at her. And I just stopped. I had to listen to her. I made her calm. And I just built that rapport with her, and she loved it. And I've used this in airports. I've used this all sorts of places.
Didn't she get you on the next flight right away?
She did. Wonderful too. I didn't do that for that reason, though. I did that because I knew she was so frazzled. And so when you do this with authenticity, it works beautiful. Do we have another question? Nope, that was it. We both want to thank you so much for listening, for being here to listen to us. And we've been so honored to be here.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
feel free to contact us. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to thank both of you. I don't know if you've seen some of the comments in chat. I think everybody attending today loved the topic, and we're just so pleased that that you guys came to SCORE and that we were able to share this topic with all of our clients and maybe future clients as well. And we just want to thank you for that.
And we
And-
love it. Thank you.
Okay, well, and again, thank you for joining us on this noontime presentation, and take a look at our future offerings, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care, all.